in this video I want to show you how to create the second type of graphs that you will need to create with the data from our enzymes lab. And this just generally is going to be a walkthrough of the instructions that you can find starting on page 321 of the lab manual. So the first thing you're going to need to do is go to our Canvas page here, and you're going to need to scroll down, and you'll see a link here to an enzymes data Excel file. So if you click on that, that'll take you to a link where you can download that file. So you want to download it and save it somewhere that's memorable on the computer that you're working on. So in this case, I'm just going to save it on the desktop. And once you've saved that, you can open that up. And so here's that file in Excel. And you'll notice this is set up with some boxes that are already structured for you for just typing in your absorbance values, right? So this first tab here, effective concentration, you'll notice across the columns here we have our different concentrations of hydrogen peroxide and then the different times at which we measured absorbances. So all you need to do in this chart is just go through and type in your absorbances at these different times for these different concentrations of hydrogen peroxide. But the next thing you need to do is you need to then create a graph that shows how these absorbances change through time at these different concentrations. So we're going to be creating a scatter plot with smooth lines and markers. And just to show you what this looks like, I'm going to work in a fresh Excel spreadsheet here, and I'm going to use some data from an experiment that I conducted where I measured the size of the fungus garden for leafcutter ants that were fed different diets, a control diet or one with extra protein, carbohydrate, or phosphorus. So what you'll notice here is I just made a little table that's set up in a very similar fashion to our enzyme data. So I've got my different times 1 through 5, and then I've got my 4 different treatment groups here across the columns. So to get started here, what you want to do is first highlight all of your data, including the column titles and the row labels. And then you're going to go to the Insert menu. And from here, among the different types of charts, you're going to select an XY scatter chart. Okay? And then within the XY scatter chart, there's a couple of different options. The one that we want is this one here, scatter with smooth lines and markers. And you notice if I hold the mouse over this, it will show me the name of that. So smooth lines and markers. So I'm going to click that, and that is automatically going to make a graph for me. So a couple things to notice. So it's given me an automatic title. I don't want that title, remember. It's also automatically given me different lines for my different columns, right? Control, protein, carbohydrate, phosphorus. So for you, this is going to be, for example, your different hydrogen peroxide concentrations. As a reminder, you still need to add a couple of things to your graph, right? So I'm going to go to this add chart element, and I'm going to add axis titles. Right? And in this case, on my x-axis, this is time, and my y-axis in this case is fungus garden area in squared centimeters. Okay? Your x-axis should also be time, right? And remember your units for that. And then your y-axis is going to be absorbance, and absorbance doesn't have a unit, so it's just going to be absorbance. Another thing that helps make graphs look a little bit more clean is if we clear out some of these gray lines in the background. So I'm just going to click to select them, and I'll press delete. And same with these horizontal lines, click to select, press delete. And then what that does is it really highlights my data rather than having a lot of distracting background lines. So the next thing to do is I need to put this into a Word document. So I'm just going to click on the graph to select it overall. And then you can use Command or Control C, or you can right click and select copy. Then open up a Word document. And you could also use a Google Doc for this. And then in your Word document, just click paste, Command V, okay? We're going to think for a second. Okay, there is figure 1, panel A. So now for the second part of this figure, you need to calculate the rate of the reaction, right? And you're going to do this by subtracting the absorbance at 20 seconds, so that's what's entered in here, from the absorbance at 80 seconds. So that's this line here. So you're going to need to do that calculation. There's actually a way to do it using a formula here. This is shown for you for one concentration. See if you can apply that formula to make those calculations for the rest of your absorbances. But I'll also just show you a similar thing in using the other data that I've been working with. So here I'm going to have my treatment, and again in this case my treatments are control, protein, carbohydrate, and phosphorus. And here I want my change over time. And so in this case, I'm just going to take my last measurement minus my first measurement. So I'm going to use the equals sign. I'll select my last measurement, minus sign, my first measurement, and then I'll press enter. And it's a little hard to do copy and paste here, so I'm just going to repeat the process for my other measurements. Okay, so now I've got my treatments and change over time. Now, in my case, it doesn't make quite as much sense because these are, qualitative categories. For your data, right, you have different concentrations of hydrogen peroxide and then the rate of the reaction associated with that concentration. So for this, again, what you want to do is you're going to select all of your data, and you're once again going to make a smooth scatter plot. Okay, so scatter plot, smooth lines. Okay, and so here, this is just kind of made an arbitrary assignment of these 4 values, right? So 8, 0, 16, 13, and has drawn a smooth line to connect them. So this would be my equivalent to figure 1b. Again, you don't want a title. You can clean out these grid lines. Make sure you add your horizontal axis label and your vertical axis label. Make sure you've got your units on there. Then select the whole chart, and again you can use Command C to copy. And then press return in a Word document and then paste. And then you've got panel B. And then these both get a single figure legend. So in this case, I'm just going to call this figure 1. Changes in fungus garden area over time for leafcutter ant colonies that received one of 4 different diets. Panel A shows the change over time, while panel B shows the overall change from the beginning to the end of the experiment. And then I'm going to want to put in a few words about my methods, right? So colonies were fed diets made from polenta, cornmeal. Let me resize this a little. And fungus garden areas were measured from overhead photos. And so there's a brief summary of my methods, and then I want to include some kind of take-home message. So overall, colonies given the high carbohydrate diet had the largest fungus gardens, and colonies given the high protein diet had the smallest fungus gardens. Surprisingly, the phosphorus and carbohydrate treatments had more fungus garden growth compared to the control treatment. And just one last note here. Some of your results might match what you expected, some might not. Include all of your results, and the place where you can point out whether things matched up with what you expected or not is right here, like I've illustrated in your figure legend. And it's okay to get results that don't match what you expected. What's helpful to do is to think of some reasons why you might have had results that didn't correspond with what you thought you would get. And you may or may not want to put something about that in your figure legend. But that's it for these figures. So this spreadsheet that I've provided for you has a set of different tabs. So there's one for examining substrate concentration, one for examining the effects of temperature, right? So this is set up very similarly. One for the effect of differences in pH, and then one for the effect of hydroxylamine. And notice the instructions for this one say all you need to do is create a column graph to compare the untreated extract with the hydroxylamine treated extract. So it might look like a lot, but it's not as bad as it seems. Hopefully this video helps give you a leg up in putting those graphs together. And again, save your enzyme data once you've finished with the spreadsheet, and then just upload that to Canvas. And then for your figures, you want to print out and turn in your figures along with your Lab 3 assignment at the start of lab next week.